Everybody, we are live in Zoom, we are live on Instagram, and we are live in Facebook on the Chelsey Gene Lymphatics page, which is streaming into our BooB Camp group. I've got Melanie with me tonight, so please welcome Melanie to her first ever BooB Camp. I know that she caught up on last night, the night before. Now, Melanie and I met when we were up in Bowen last month, and I sat there with Jules and we're like, oh my God, like that's cool and that's cool. And then I want to know more about all of these things. And I know that my community want to know more about everything that you've got to teach as well, Mel. So yeah, welcome to BooB Camp.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Yes, you are very welcome. So if you are live in Zoom, please know you can ask any questions. We can interact. Same with on Instagram. I will try to keep an eye on all of the comments that are coming through. And on Facebook, Mads, you're going to have to transfer the comments to me, please, because for some reason that it doesn't work that well. So just open up this chat bot here so I can read. Okay. So when it comes to dentistry, Mads, can you please make sure one of the questions that somebody asked was, could the speakers be made as the main big picture? Because when the ladies are watching it back, they said it's a little bit hard to follow. Can you do that from your end?
I think it's on your end.
It's my end. If I go view speaker.
Yeah.
Rightio. Okay, let's try that. Okay, so going to the dentist isn't like the best thing. It's the most fun thing that we ever do. And I'm sure that you hear that a lot, Mel. And yeah, can be a little bit daunting, but dentistry is a little bit more, and what you're going to talk about tonight is not just about teeth and holes and fillings. We're talking about the whole structure of everything pretty much above your shoulders. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I loved listening to you talk in Bowen. I'm like, wow, like she's talking about so much stuff that I need to know as an adult, because we're all doing different breath work now. Like breath work is really cool, and learning how to breathe is really cool. One really cool tip that I picked up this year was, if you put your tongue at the front of your at the back of your front teeth, it allows you to breathe into your belly more. And so that's my cool fun fact for tonight. But you're going to talk about like so many other things. So what we're running through tonight is tongue posture, the correct way to swallow, nose breathing versus mouth breathing, breathing for sleep, and of course the detoxing the brain with the glymphatic system. All of those things super important to for health, right? For general health. And I would love everyone to get your pen and paper up, because you're going to pick up with some really cool tips. So first off, Mel, tell us a little bit about you. You've got a 3-year-old sleeping at the moment. Yes.
Yeah, I was saying to Chelsey before we started recording, that's why I've got a door open behind me in case she decides to wake up, which she never does. But tonight would be the night to change that on me. So yeah, mother of one little 3-year-old girl. I live in Bowen, up in North Queensland, the Whitsunday region, which is where I met Chelsey recently at a glymphatics workshop. Professionally, I'm an oral health therapist and orofacial myofunctional therapist. So my background is in dental practices, treating children and doing dental hygiene care. And in recent years, I've also moved on to study and work in muscle function and facial development work, which is called orofacial myology. Very big mouthful, big terms there, but we're just talking about muscle function in the mouth and face.
We do see, I know, like you do notice that people's jaws are going backwards more, aren't they?
Yeah. So as humans across most of the planet, we're having a problem with how we're growing our faces. It's a lot to do with diet, and it's also a lot to do with breathing. We're mouth breathing a lot, and we're eating a lot of processed foods, as well as being nutritionally deficient as well. It's changing the way that we're growing our faces, and then therefore our whole skull and our upper airway structures, which is, yeah, impacting everything from what we then are able to eat, how we sleep, our nervous system, our posture. It's really a never-ending kind of scenario.
So is it we're not chewing properly? We're not chewing enough? Is it we're not chewing enough?
Yeah, so as kind of across the board, generally, we're not chewing food anywhere near as much as our ancestors did, because we have our conveniences where we have so much more food that's already chewed for us, basically. Our ultra processed foods, like even just crackers, breads, chips, biscuits, like that's all quite heavily processed. But then also things like drinking smoothies all the time, little kids eating from yogurt pouches, they're sucking on them, they're not chewing foods, compared to thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, where our ancestors had to spend hours and hours a day to chew through their food to be able to digest it. That's what these beautiful broad skulls that we're supposed to have, big strong jaws, wide palates. But as we've come down the line, we're not chewing as much. We're changing how we're breathing is kind of interacting with that as well. We're getting smaller and smaller faces. Our side profiles are going backwards and they're flat instead of the middle and lower third of our face growing out from our forehead. They're just not really growing. We're what they call mid-face deficient.
Okay, so get back where like the chewing, the not chewing part, because the first part of breaking down food, well, probably before that, the first part of breaking of digestion is when you are smelling the food cooking. And then when you're preparing and cutting, your stomach acid is building up then and you start to get the saliva build in your mouth while you're preparing food, right? So that's the first part. Then, is that right? And then comes the mechanical chewing part, because our stomach acid needs that time to build up so then it can break down the food.
Yeah, so preferably it also smells real food, not the chemical things that have been added to make food seem more attractive to us. But yes, that you get that response if you people do that experiment where if you just think about there's a lemon in your hand and you look at it, you think what it tastes like, you start to salivate. So then yes, it goes into your mouth and you mechanically break it down, but your saliva also adds digestive enzymes to that food. And then that's all sorts of signals to your brain and your stomach to let it know that food is coming, and that those acids need to do their next job of digestion.
Yeah, and that's the part that we're missing out on. So many people have high an acidic body, but low stomach acid. And you put in food into a stomach with no stomach acid, and it's like it just goes, boop, boop, boop. There's no digestion, and then you're just going to poo out whole bits, or like really slow. Your body isn't going to break down and get the nutrients out of your food if we don't go through these steps of digestion. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that unfortunately adds to the problems that people are having when they don't have enough stomach acid, like reflux. Because if you've got slow motility through that system, it's going to back it up, and those things are going to get worse.
Yes, yes. So many people don't have enough stomach acid. Like I reckon 90% of people have very low stomach acid. So I would prescribe digestive enzymes to everybody. Pretty much to everybody, to help break down, because the food that they're eating, as we know, is mostly processed chemical shit. And when we put something that's processed into our belly, the enzymes don't know, because the thing that we're putting in is processed. It's a number. It's a 734210. And then our digestive enzymes go, oh, I don't know what to do with that. It's a chemical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's
I like
another
to say
thing.
that, because I work a lot with children, I say to parents, your child's belly wants processed food, but it wants their mouth to do the processing.
Yes.
Thinking of it a bit backwards.
I love that. So yeah, getting kids. So is there how we're supposed to wait for babies not to eat real food to a certain age? I don't know. Cohen's like 18 now. So like I
You just get rid of the information you don't need anymore, right? You just,
yes.
just dump it. Yeah.
Like I think I
Months.
breastfed until he was 9 months old, until he was walking. He walked at 9 months, and yeah, so I think I breastfed up until then. But he was having food a lot earlier than that. Some food earlier than that, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so 6 months is the general age recommendation, and then from there, there's readiness for solids guidelines. Things like, can they sit upright in a high chair unassisted? Are they reaching and grabbing for food? Things like that. A lot of the time, especially like we're on the topic of reflux babies are often advised to have solid food a little earlier to help that scenario, but that is not necessarily the best thing.
Okay.
So their stomachs aren't really ready until they're 6 months to start delving into solids.
Yeah. Leonie's asked, how do you know if you have enough stomach acid?
One's for you, Chelsey.
Yeah. So with the stomach acid, your body's going to be breaking down the foods properly. You're not going to get bloating in your tummy. You're not going to fart a lot, I suppose, like have a lot of wind. You're going to be able to process the food that goes in. It's like a witch's cauldron. If the fire is going underneath the witch's cauldron when you put the food in, then all the nutrients is going to get broken up, get taken away, and then you're going to feel hungry again, like within like the next 5 hours or so, and you're not going to have the pain and the reflux and the bloating and you know those sort of things. So that's how I would tell with your stomach acid. Okay. Trace, I have paresthesis, so I can't digest what I eat like normal. Do you know that word?
No.
I'm going to have to look that up, Trace. So I can't digest what I eat like normal. Yes. So it looks like, is it a freezing of the gastrointestinal? Might be that. So yeah, digestive enzymes, I think. I just digestive enzymes for everybody. Digestive enzymes are like Pac-Man, and they just come through and help break everything up. Sorry, I cannot hear. Internet is not good. Will be on the page. Yes, it will. Yeah, and lots of people have their gallbladder removed. They definitely need to have digestive enzymes as well. They don't get told that. So if you have your gallbladder removed, you can't break down fats properly. And so, yeah, everybody needs to be on enzymes. Thanks, Trace, for that question. Oh, so when I eat, it takes a long time to digest food. Okay, thanks. Different Tracy on this one. Okay, so let's get on to where do you want to start, babe? Do you want tongue posture, swallowing? That's sort of the same sort of thing. Nose, mouth, breathing. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with tongue posture. Why not?
Okay, let's
That's
go
usually
with
the
tongue
one that
posture.
is most mind-blowing for people. So our tongues are supposed to have a certain posture within our mouths. It's very important for them to posture correctly in order, especially for children, to help grow their faces, grow the roof of their mouth and the palate. It also helps us with a calming nervous system interaction. We get a lot of hormones produced, and a lot of our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest, is stimulated by a correct tongue posture and swallow. It's way more interesting and involved than you might have expected from your tongue. So tongues are supposed to sit up in the roof of the mouth, up on the palate. The tip of your tongue should sit just behind your top front teeth. So if you have a feel now, there's a little bumpy piece of gum just behind your two top front teeth. It has a special name, incisive papilla. In the work that I do, we call it the spot. And we're always talking about the spot because this is the basis of any work that I do in correcting muscle function in the mouth and face. So the tip of the tongue is supposed to sit on that spot whenever you are not communicating or eating. So
mine doesn't.
It doesn't.
Mine would normally just drop down.
Yeah, so low tongue posture is very, very common.
Okay.
So we have to retrain that basically.
Okay.
So what we work on when we retrain muscle function in the mouth and face is we use a process called neuroplasticity. So that means that the neural pathways, like the wiring of your brain, is plastic. It has the ability to be molded and changed. The younger you the easier that is, but it never actually goes away. We always have the capacity for it. So at the moment, the way that you use your tongue, the muscles in your mouth and face is like a program in your brain. You're doing it automatically. And I think I used this analogy the other day, Chelsey. You get into a car and you put your seatbelt on. You've been doing that for as long as you've been getting in a car, or as long as, you know, seatbelts have been in cars, and you're not really thinking about it. If you wanted to change that, you would have to put quite a bit of thought into it. You would automatically get in the car and reach for that seatbelt every time. And you would have to stop yourself if for some reason you wanted to stop doing that. So it's the same with the muscle function in your mouth and face. Wherever is you're resting your tongue, which is likely very low in your mouth, resting on teeth or resting on the floor of the mouth, if you want to change that, you have to repeatedly do it differently. So tip of the tongue up to the spot, the bumpy piece of gum behind your top front teeth. You have to go for that again and again and again and again. And you have to remind yourself throughout the day, where's my tongue? Is it up on the spot? Until eventually that pathway gets rewired, remolded in the brain, and you'll do it automatically. You'll go and check one day, where's my tongue? And it's already there. So that's the tip.
You do breathe better. You do breathe better, a lot better when your tongue is up.
So your tongue posture supports the soft tissues in the back of your throat to support your airway. And it also is the attachment we have underneath our tongue. People might be familiar with tongue ties. We hear a lot in the space about babies and breastfeeding. The little tissue that attaches the tongue to the floor of the mouth is called a frenum. It's like a diaphragm. It tenses up like this in its attachment. And everyone has one. They're entirely normal. And that diaphragm attachment is attached to your actual diaphragm in your chest with your lungs and into your pelvis via fascia. So when you pull that one up, you pull up your diaphragm and you pull up your pelvis. So when we have these dysfunction issues in our mouth and face, we often see changes to posture, breathing. We can see pelvic tilts and things like that. There's quite a lot of ongoing connections. But yes, tip of the tongue is on the spot, and the rest of your tongue should rest against the palate. So your whole tongue should be up against the roof of your mouth. If I can get close enough, I can see.
So
like that.
on Instagram, show me what you're doing again, Mel. She's got her tongue like super high.
If you've not done it before, it's probably going to be quite tricky. So that's where your whole tongue should be. That's when we're not communicating and we're not eating. That is how your tongue rests.
More tongue exercises, everybody. Yes, Pam. Pam has called for more tongue exercises. Not just poking tongues, other things with your tongue. Like that.
Good,
yeah.
Well done. So that's the sort of the base of then our whole correct oral rest posture. So the tongue is lightly suctioned up against the roof of the mouth. Teeth do not touch in a correct resting posture of the mouth. So they shouldn't be clamped down together. They should be slightly apart. Lips should be closed, and nose breathing. So that's how everyone should be set from the day they're born until the day they're no longer here. That's what we should all be doing with our mouths.
Do you look at people's tongues as well? Because part of my naturopathy course was we read people's tongues, and you know, if there's a big line down the middle, or if there's what's the bits called down
Galloping?
the side? Galloping. Did you say?
I don't read them in the same way that a naturopath does.
Scallops, tongue, and like you can do a whole course on reading tongues.
Yeah. I do look at things like geographic tongue, the patches
geographic,
and patterns.
Yes.
The borders on the side of the tongue, looking at all the things about the appearance of the tongue, what it can do can it move? Can it move sideways? Can it look in circles? What does it look like when they poke it out? Is it shaking? Is it poked down? There's lots of different things we should be able to do with our tongues. And another one, just because we're having fun tongue facts right now, you should be able to curl your tongue. A lot of people believe that that's a genetic trait, being able to curl your tongue, but it's muscle function. Hey, you can already do it. Clever girl.
Can everyone curl their tongue? Like, I thought that was normal.
No, a lot of people cannot do it. 5 years ago, I couldn't do it. I had to teach myself.
Wow. Okay. Everyone, please try to curl your tongue. All right. All right. That's fun. Okay. Next one, swallowing.
Swallowing. So that correct tongue posture is also the basis for a correct swallowing pattern, what we call a mature or an adult swallowing pattern. So babies are born with an immature swallow that helps them breastfeed. They push their tongue forward and lift it up, and they continue that. They work on maturing that through toddlerhood. By the time they're in a full solid diet, they should be lifting their tongue up to the roof of the mouth and swallowing in a wave pattern. So the tongue no longer pushes forward and it no longer sits down to swallow. So that's when it stays in that pattern of a baby, we call that a tongue thrust swallow, or an immature or a backwards swallow, which a lot of people do. So what blows people's mind as well with the swallowing is that there should be no muscles of facial expression used to swallow. Swallowing should be like quiet and almost unseen. So
Okay.
you can see it in the throat.
Yes.
You shouldn't see it in the face. A swallow is all about the tongue. Unfortunately, when we have changes to our muscle function, changes to the growth of our mouth and face, the tongue doesn't always have the space that it needs, and it doesn't always have the ability to move like it needs to. So other muscles will help out in the lips, in the cheek. I see a lot of kids who move their whole head to get a swallow happening because they've got so much weakness and inability to coordinate all those muscles in their mouth and face. So what that swallow does, the tongue is a muscle. A lot of people know that, have heard that. The tongue is actually 16 muscles in a group. So you're moving a lot of muscle. Everyone here knows all about lymph and is all about moving muscles for lymph. You're moving a major muscle group in your head and neck when you swallow correctly and use your tongue correctly. So you've got a lymphatic element. You stimulate the vagus nerve at the back of your throat. So that's your rest and digest, your gut-brain connection side. You stimulate all the nerves that come into your palate. And you also, that's the first stage of your your next digestive movement. So what the tongue is doing, that wave action, is called a peristaltic wave, and that's what happens through the sphincters through the rest of your digestive system. So it's step one. It's the first wave to push all the next ones going. So when we have immature, incorrect swallowing patterns and chewing problems, we're going to see digestive problems alongside that.
So it's just one into the next, into the next. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why picking these things up early, I was having a good, Cohen and I were walking the dogs this morning, and we're talking about how just do the hard stuff now for the long-term gain, right? I just think it's important. Just do what you need to do now. Put the effort in, put the work in, because it's going to lead to the biggest gains later on in life. Yeah. So same when it comes to these exercises and things.
Yeah, for children, we are born with about 50% facial growth finished, and by age 6, 80% of facial growth is finished. So we've got our first 6 years where we have so much ability to set things up the right way, to intervene if we need to. It's not impossible, but later it's just much harder and typically more expensive.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, the next one, nose breathing, mouth breathing. So mouth tape has become a thing lately. Yeah. So let's talk about nose breathing and mouth breathing, and which one we should do more, and the benefits.
Yeah, so definitely nose breathing. Nose breathing is what we are supposed to be doing most of the time. We're born as babies as what they call an obligate nose breather. So we're supposed to be breathing through our nose from day one of life. We do have an oral airway. Of course, we do have the capacity to breathe through our mouths. That's important for when we have these short-term things like exercising past our point of our capacity. So we're at exertion. Because we get a lot more volume of air coming through our mouth. So we're kind of grabbing for it when we're under a point of exertion. And also when we have something like a virus that's blocked our nose, we need another option. It's like an emergency, but it shouldn't be how we breathe most of the time. And so the nose has all the functions that we need. Like our body, when we use it the way it's supposed to be used, the way it's designed, it sets everything up to work really well. So our nose filters, humidifies, warms air for the lungs. It controls the volume that goes into the lungs. It produces more gases that are part of our immune response to start, attacking things before they get into our lungs. It supports us to stand upright because it's much easier to breathe properly through our lungs and open our diaphragm. when we breathe through our nose. Mouth breathing makes us kind of roll forward and hunch everything. Where do we go else with nose breathing? We stimulate our
so many things.
Yeah, I'm just like I even when I did a presentation, I met Chelsey out like the other day. I had to cut the list kind of short because how much time do people want to hear about this? But it's a very restful, calm state to be nose breathing.
So on Insta, the Mother Lung Breathwork has said if only more humans learnt how to breathe better, so much of the stress epidemic would be reduced.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as just like the chewing thing, kind of across the board as humans, we're breathing too much. We breathe too shallow and too fast.
Yes.
We all need to slow down. We need to breathe. It's so bizarre thing to hear someone say you need to breathe less. But we do. We need to slow it all down.
I know when I was scuba diving, and I know that's breathing through your mouth, but when I do a lot of scuba diving, I was so peaceful. And I would go, shit, I haven't even taken a breath. Like and I would come back, we add it in my tank with still enough air in my tank to go and do another dive. Like for some reason, it was just when you're just so peaceful and just swimming, I was like, oh, I have to breathe. I've got to breathe. Like, and the regulator like pushes air into your mouth. It's like, oh, yeah. So yeah, and I noticed like, cause my pop was 93 when he passed away. And as he got older, he would breathe a lot shallower. And it like little puffs and not expand, his chest as it needs to be. So that happens as we get older, doesn't it?
Yeah, like everything, we have a decline in a lot of our functions with age. I don't think that they need to decline as much as they do in our current health circumstances. Obviously, I don't know your pop, but if he was sort of hunched over in his posture, if that wasn't as supportive as it could have been through his later years, and that would have been making his breathing more difficult.
Yeah.
And as I was sort of saying, if you hunch and slump, it's much harder to breathe through your nose, and it's actually easier to breathe through your mouth. So most of the relationships we have with our breathing and our mouth and face and the rest of the body are quite circular. They feed each other. So poor posture will affect your breathing. Your breathing will affect your posture. And they just kind of feed into each other. So a bit tricky to know sometimes which one came first by the time we are at later stages of our life. Did we have a postural issue that changed our breathing, or did we have a breathing problem that changed our posture? A bit hard to say.
So mouth tape, is it a thing? Is it not a thing? What do you say? Yes, no?
I don't like it used when you don't know what's going on in your airway. So if you are concerned that your mouth breathing, particularly at night, is something that like typically what people are using it for sleep, because they've heard how good it is to breathe through your nose during sleep, but you don't know why you're mouth breathing, then it can be quite dangerous, especially in children. Across the board, do not put it on a child.
No.
That's a hard no. Because they have, less capacity than us to deal with it if it's going wrong during the night. It can be a very useful tool to help with lip closure and to help support the change into nasal breathing. Once you've investigated that you don't have an underlying problem that needs to be looked at, like you have an ear, nose and throat specialist put a camera up your nose, something like that, because if you block your emergency exit, then you're going to be essentially suffocating yourself during your sleep. Not good at all.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, and they've done studies on this. They put mouth tape on sleep apnea patients in sleep studies to see what they do. And what they do is this mouth puffing thing, like they try and puff out the carbon dioxide out of their mouth. So it doesn't treat any conditions. So if you have obstructive sleep apnea or the broader picture of sleep and breathing disorders, mouth tape is not going to be your miracle cure.
Yeah.
But it's a useful training tool. And what I tend to use, if I do use it with a patient, is we use one that's a border around the mouth. So it's a support and a reminder rather than a lip closure.
Okay. Yeah. So far we've got our tongue up on the roof of our mouth, and we are breathing at what should we count? Like, is there a better count of how many breaths in and how many breaths out? Or we just try to do a nice belly breath through our nose?
Yeah, different breathing, as you're saying, like breathing training, breathing techniques have different ideas. Some people find it really stressful to count their breathing. So a little bit more of a flow sort of feeling is better. But you can start with that. Some people like box breathing, that 4-4-4, breathe in 4, hold 4, out 4, in 4. But the one that I do most often is we breathe in for 4 and breathe out for 6. We want to have a longer exhale more than we want to have deeper, bigger inhales. The belly breathing thing is interesting because what tends to happen when we're doing belly breathing is we're doing this big, like, abdominal pushing. Like, that's not actually what we want. We want our rib cage expanding. So I'm going to stand a little bit for you here.
Okay.
I call it chicken wings. You put your hands around your ribs.
I'll copy you for everybody on Instagram.
Cool. So yeah, so if pinky fingers are roughly level with your belly button, you've got a full grip all the way around to your rib cage. So you want to breathe in and feel like you're pushing out those hands and expanding your rib cage. All the way around to your back.
Okay.
So when people talk about belly breathing, they end up kind of just pushing out their stomachs.
Pushing the belly out, yes.
Yeah.
Round
that's not where your lungs are. So don't worry about that bit. You want to open and expand your rib cage because that is housing your lungs and getting you the full capacity of your lungs. So it's really helpful to lay down and do that for a lot of people as well. Like, standing can feel a little bit awkward. Lay down, have hands like just under your boobs basically, and get that rib cage moving out sideways, the full expansion, not just up and down.
And that's when we're going to work on all of the lymphatics too, right? All the deep breathing, all those 300 lymph nodes in your belly, pumping that 15 liters of lymph around, you know, everywhere that it needs to be. So is it better to sleep on your side or on your back when it comes to tongue?
Side sleeping is usually the best recommendation for most people. But if you can't get to sleep, then you can't get to sleep on your side. But what we have, especially if there's an existing problem with the growth of the jaw or the tongue posture and control, if you're on your back, it's all going to drop. Gravity's got a hold of it.
Yes.
So it's not too often that we find that some people can have positional obstructive sleep apnea. It's purely happening when they're on their back because of that situation of the tongue dropping back and the jaw dropping back. And if there's excess weight, that heaviness on the neck and the airway structures is not good either. So side sleeping is typically the most recommended.
Yeah, everyone's writing. This is so interesting. Thank you so much. Very interesting. Claire, do you remember Claire who came up with me to Bowen? She's given lots of love hearts and little signs. Okay, so next one, breathing for sleep. Now let's get on to the glymphatic system, which when did you first hear about the glymphatic system?
That's a good question.
Were you were you taught it, or did you find out about it yourself?
Oh no, I found out by myself. No one's talking about that at uni. No.
Nobody talks about it at uni.
No, and how long and for listeners, how long research can take to get into clinical practice. It's an average of 15 years.
Yeah.
And the glymphatic system was officially named and discovered in 2012. I graduated in 2016, so there's no way that would have been in my program. And we weren't talking. We had a part of an orthodontics lecture that talked about sleep apnea because there are orthodontic jaw movement appliances that work with that, but no glymphatics. That was from dental sleep medicine textbooks that I heard about the glymphatic system.
Yeah, so if you're going to a health practitioner who has been out of uni for 20 years, then they're really not going to be up to date with anything
Not unless they've chosen to be. And it's
Not
hard work
unless
to
they've
be.
chosen to be. Yeah.
Not by any means lazy by not keeping up, because it's hard work and a lot of money to keep on top of all the new innovations and research and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you just same with me. I was just researching and just learning and different things. It's like, oh, and I stumbled across this glymphatic and never been taught about it. And I was like, oh my God, like this is the thing. This is the thing that everybody needs to know about more. Yeah? You feel that too?
Yes, definitely. And definitely in the world of sleep and breathing, as I shared a bit of that research of what we understand now, it's been long established, it's been very well known that obstructive sleep apnea is a risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia, for our neural degenerative diseases. And the glymphatic system seems to be the piece of the puzzle that explains that relationship, because if we are not breathing well while we sleep, then we're going to interrupt our sleep cycles. We're going to have less sleep quality and less sleep quantity. And that impacts our glymphatic system, which is most active during sleep. We don't do as much with it during the day. We need sleep to clear those toxins from the brain. So if you come to sleep not able to breathe properly, not to be able to get into a restful state and follow your sleep cycles and stay asleep, then your glymphatic system is in a bit of trouble, and it's going to hold on to those toxins, and that's going to start to affect your brain. So then we have this Alzheimer's dementia epidemic, pretty much where we're at the moment, as I think you
Number
shared the
one
other
killer.
day.
Yep, number one killer of women in Australia.
And women are desperately underdiagnosed for sleep and breathing disorders. When people think sleep apnea, they think overweight, middle-aged male. We've got to change that, because it's a full spectrum. We've got about 80% of people who have sleep and breathing disorders not diagnosed. That's massive. It's
That
absolutely
is
massive.
massive. Yeah, 80%.
Yes, in women,
80.
it just looks different. They're not necessarily snoring. Like, I was careful how I was about to nearly name them. I know someone who is very slim, very small build, active, otherwise relatively healthy, obstructive sleep apnea in their 50s.
Mm.
And it was only, my nudging and prompting that got that diagnosed. It blows my mind what isn't investigated. So in more recent years, since I had my daughter, I work for myself, and I just focus on this muscle function part, but I was previously in a private dental practice. And once I did this training, the conversations I started having with people, like, oh, your jaw is a bit small, you've got a lot of unusual wear on your teeth, do you snore, or do you have problems with your sleep? And the amount of people that said yes, 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 all those things, I've been trying to figure it out for years. How did you know? And it's because I can see it in your mouth.
Yeah.
And then people who did say, yes, I have obstructive sleep apnea, my next question is, do you know why? And the amount of people that have no idea why, they just get their CPAP,
Yeah,
go
why?
on with life.
Yeah. It's the same when I see somebody walking towards me, like I can do an analysis. I can know so much about them just by looking at the way that they walk, the way that they hold themselves, where they hold fluid or weight. You can do so much just by looking at somebody walk towards you. Could do the same by looking at their face and their structure and having a little bit of a conversation.
Starts in the waiting room. You see it.
Yes.
How is the person sitting and holding their mouth in the waiting room? If they're sitting there waiting, not talking to anyone, but the mouth is open, we've already got an oral posture, muscle function, and breathing problem. And inside the mouth, you'll see a small jaw, crowded teeth, high narrow palate, low tongue posture. In kids, big tonsils, small structures at the back of the mouth.
Yeah.
Tooth decay, gum disease, on it goes.
So there's a lot more that we could do for kids instead of just rip their tonsils out, right?
Yes, definitely. So if you backtrack, in most cases, pretty much most people I have worked with, if you go back to the start, that kid that's turned up with the large tonsils and adenoids, candidate for surgery, didn't breastfeed very well, or didn't take to their solids very well, or had a slow speech development, or had crowded teeth from the start. So baby teeth should have gaps. They came in and were sitting right next to each other. The problems start, unfortunately, in utero, which unfortunately also means they start preconception. We can kind of never stop.
Yes.
But yes, the tonsils coming out of the ENT surgery is a bit end of line compared to what we could have actually been dealing with way back when. The correct and first function of the mouth for the baby is to be breastfeeding. If that's not
Yes.
working, there's a reason. And it's great we have formula in bottles, so we have survival. But we need to look a little bit further into that, because that sets them up for continuing to not grow their mouths and face properly, continuing to not nose breathe. And then we have all our digestive and nutritional issues follow on from that.
Cesareans, like starting
Yep.
from a cesarean. Yeah. All the medical interventions.
Yes, antibiotics, all sorts of things that can impact
Antibiotics.
what's going on there. And then the large tonsils and adenoids are part of that cycle. They're going to keep the mouth small. They're going to keep the mouth breathing happening. They're going to keep their immune system low and their sleep crappy around they go. But yes, large tonsils and adenoids have a lot of more underlying factors than what our medical system is able to, or willing and able to, support. So I often work with naturopaths that look at immune function, nutritional deficiencies, and then from my point of view, I look at how they're eating, what they're eating, how they're breathing, and supporting sleep environments and things like that. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean we never have or never should have ENT surgeries, because obviously sometimes they're life-saving. We don't want a child living with sleep apnea. That's not cool. Brains need oxygen. We don't want kids trying to grow without oxygen to their brain. But there's definitely far, far more to it, because unfortunately that medical ENT track, the only thing is steroids, antibiotics, and surgery. There's not really anything else offered or talked about.
So if people want to reach you, Mel, you do a lot of this over Zoom. You can help people. They can book in with you and they can send you their information, and then you can just like we're doing now, do an assessment and help them out with all of this one-on-one.
Yes, the majority of my work is online because I live in a small little town. We have like 9,000 people here. So, not a very big customer base, but yes, mostly online. I work with children. All my resources and everything online are like they're targeted at children, but they're relevant for the whole family. Like if we're talking about sleep hygiene and nose breathing, like that's for everyone. But patient-wise, I do only work with children these days.
Yeah. Okay. So, how would we reduce braces and the so my son didn't have braces. He chose to have, what's the other thing?
Invisalign.
Invisalign, yes. And he did really well with the Invisalign.
Yeah, much more aesthetically pleasing, isn't it? Yeah, so reducing the need for braces comes back to making sure we're using our mouths and faces properly. So when we get crowded teeth and small jaws, we can think of, like when we think about how that's happened, there's a good analogy of like our head is like a lump of clay and our muscles are like the sculptor. So they're actually going to be driving the growth in our mouth and face. So if we don't use our muscles properly, we don't have our tongue resting up on the roof of the mouth, sitting up there when we swallow, we're not chewing a lot, keeping our mouths closed, nose breathing, then we're going to put pressure like this on the side of our face, and our jaw is going to follow our tongue. So it's going to sit low and back, and we're going to get small, lower jaws and small, tight roofs of our mouth. So the way that braces work is pressure over time. So you only need a very small amount of pressure on teeth to move them over a period of time, like 17 grams of pressure. It's barely anything. Next time you get your kitchen scales, press on them 17 grams. It's hardly anything. But obviously you need it over time. Otherwise braces would just push teeth out all over the place. Our tongue has up to 500 grams of pressure available to it when it's pushing up there and swallowing. And the muscles on the side here have about 300 grams of pressure available to them. So they need to be in balance. The tongue needs to push out a little bit more than the ones on the side do. But if the tongue's down and these ones are pushing, having hardly anything oppose them, then we're going to get smaller, longer faces. And that's where we end up at the orthodontist office.
So good.
Again, if you track back, did you breastfeed? Did you chew properly? Did you use sippy cups and bottles and dummies for a long time? Thumb sucking, all those sorts of things. Anything foreign in the mouth is going to change the way it grows. as well as alter the muscle function, which is also going to change the way it grows. So to stop braces, we need to use our tongues properly and chew our food properly and breathe properly.
Okay. Another thing that happened with because I believed my dentist for a long time and now I question everything. But what about the capping of the teeth so they don't get they put the white caps into the teeth so then you won't need fillings later or to stop them from decaying. What do you think
Yeah,
about
so they're called fissure seals.
fissure seals? Yeah.
Sealants, yeah. Um, it's one of the elements we have in dentistry, kind of similar to the heavy use of fluoride, where the dental industry is trying to deal with a very, very big problem with the tools that they have. So what we need to prevent tooth decay is to do the things we've been talking about, like use our mouth and face properly, breathe properly. We need to have healthy, whole foods. We need to be happy, healthy, well moving humans, and we're not. So the problem the dental industry has is unhealthy people and trying to stop tooth decay. So the tools that they have to do that are not they're not genuinely preventative, I guess. They
Yeah.
are still reactive. And what they're doing when they're doing sealants is they're looking at the molar teeth in children and seeing deep pits and fissures and grooves that are naturally there and are more at risk for tooth decay.
Okay.
And they're looking at a child that is not eating very well, is not brushing very well, and they don't often look at this part, but they're probably also not breathing and sleeping very well. And they're trying to prevent the tooth decay happening in the future. So yeah, if we're completely holistically and naturally minded and everything like that, no, the sealant isn't the answer.
Yeah.
But that's the,
Yeah.
I guess, how do you put it, like the war that the dental industry is fighting. They're trying not to have that child come back with a hole in their tooth later. We just, as a general dentistry, they don't have the tools
Yeah.
prevent that without a product and without an intervention.
But they should know by now that fluoride is a poison, right? We know we know that fluoride is a poison. Like it's a poison. And yeah, so I will never let like them near me with fluoride, and I won't use fluoride toothpaste, all of those things. They know not to come anywhere near Cohen or myself with the fluoride. They know not to ask all the time for x-rays and those types of things. And I had to get the amalgam fillings taken out and that can be finding the right dentist to do that. They're scarce. You need to find the right dentist to do that for you. But I honestly think if I had to get any more fillings, that I would just go gold. I would just try to find a dentist that would put gold in my mouth because I think that's the safest metal. Is that true? What do you think?
It's also the best for tooth wear. It wears the closest to a natural wear of enamel. So when you have other metals and ceramics and porcelain, in a crown and opposing a natural tooth, it will wear away on that tooth and it'll be a very abrasive and difficult force for its opposing teeth compared to gold, which has a natural wear pattern similar to enamel. So I'm the same. I have a tooth that is not always very happy and may end up with a crown on it one day, despite my best efforts. And I've thought the same. It will be a gold crown if it will cost.
Okay.
Let's hope that the price of gold is not going very well the day that I decide to do that.
Well, darling, when I invested in gold 3 years ago, it's gone up 60% since then, and it's only going up. So I would buy it now. Buy it now, and then if you need to, get it melted down or something. I don't know, but yeah. So that, and then also there's a lot of research going into root canals and different things. So I'm happy that this is an area now where a lot of natural health, a lot of naturopaths and a lot of people are going back to asking the questions. So like coming to a naturopath is different to going to a GP, is because we ask the questions, and like coming to you is like different to going to a dentist because you spend more time and you ask the underlying questions and you gives the people the tools to help themselves.
Yeah. And I'm also not, if you come to me and say that you don't want to use fluoride, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to have that conversation you get in that dental practice that makes you feel like this small. I'm not going to do that because I don't use fluoride either. So those sorts of things, like we can be on the same level with our conversation that you don't typically get in a dental practice, because they do tend to see things a little bit differently.
Yeah, indoctrinated. Well, they only know what they learnt while they were there, and unfortunately, they're taught by the pharmaceutical companies. So that's just how it rolls. Okay, a couple of questions. Mel, what are you doing to help your unhappy tooth now?
Yeah. Okay, so I've had one feeling in my life that's it actually breaks my heart that I have, but I've only had one. And a couple of years ago I bit on like gristle in a sausage, and it landed on the wrong part of that filling and cracked it. So that tooth possibly has very small fractures within it now. The filling's been replaced and it has settled down. So one thing I do is lymphatic drainage, because I can feel a little, a node come up just under there. So lymphatic drainage is really good for it, and massage is good for it. I've also found Bowen therapy the most helpful thing for my jaw and drainage as well. Bowen therapy just changes.
I went yesterday. I had a Bowen session yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. I mean, I love just to lay there for an hour regardless of anything else, but yeah, Bowen therapy's been great. I had to have the material changed initially because I was reacting to the material that was in there, which was really annoying. Because every time you drill into a tooth and remove a filling, you remove more parts of the tooth. So I was quite unhappy about that. But that's pretty much all that I'm doing for that at the moment, and just yeah.
What I would, if I had, I would just get the tooth removed. If it was going to be causing that much trouble, are we better off just having the tooth removed?
In my scenario right now, I would say no. I don't want to lose
but if it got bad and rotten and real and painful, would you try to fix it, or would you have it removed?
Very big question.
Yeah.
It's a very individual question, because I don't know what your health is like otherwise. Like we talked a bit about root canals the other day when we saw each other in person. And I was thinking about it later, sometimes we can get root canal treatment because of trauma. It's not always because we've been systemically unhealthy. I don't know, like how many other teeth do you have in your mouth? Is that tooth anchoring a denture or something else? Like there's a lot of factors to think through.
Yeah.
Is the root canal treatment something significant like that? Is it something to get you out of pain and make a bigger decision about what's going on with that tooth, versus having it out immediately? Like you don't want to make big decisions when you're in pain. And most dentists won't let you. They'll be like, how about we calm the tooth down and you have a think about it first. But it comes down to your body's ability to deal with that chronic infection that will remain, basically.
Yeah.
So that decision and that ability may change over time. The time that you have the root canal done, you may be doing quite well, but if something else happens in your health, then that can alter your ability to handle that infection.
Yeah. Great answer. Shan said they don't. I went to a dentist yesterday, told him I wasn't using fluoride anymore. He just sighed. This was after a lengthy discussion. Yeah. So, yeah. And then there's another question. I guess it can affect headaches as well. Can all of the structure of your jaw, can that relate to headaches?
Yes, definitely. Chronic headaches and jaw pain and neck pain, shoulder pain, the whole lot. Yeah. So that can result from, it's mostly the tongue that's driving that, because the tongue is like that diaphragm structure I mentioned before, that tenting up. That's the support for your jaw. Your jaw's hinging there and hanging out on its own. That diaphragm helping your jaw with all of its movements. So if your tongue's not moving properly and your jaw is having to help it out, swing, it's going sideways a lot more than it should, pushing forward a lot more than it should. The big muscles in the side of your face here and up in the side of your head. If you get headaches up here, temporal headaches, that's probably coming from your mouth and your jaw. Because those are the two big muscles of chewing. This fan muscle here and this big chunky muscle there.
Yeah.
So tongue tie, adults with tongue ties that were never discovered, they tend to have this big chronic shoulder, shoulder lifting, neck pain, big bulging muscles in the side of their neck, clenching and grinding, sleep disorders, mouth breathing, a whole lot.
So many, flow-on effects. Every year I've had the same molar filled at the back of my mouth. Eventually I just said, pull it out. And I'm done with all the x-rays and injections and new fillings. After a root canal 20 years ago. Yeah. Sorry, the headaches were related to glymphatics. So yeah, the headaches would be same, Sonia. So when we're doing our glymphatics, Mel, like we're brushing down, we're opening up through our chest first. We're adding in the actual physical rolling your shoulders, moving your neck from side to side, pretending you're a tiger, doing that, the opening, sticking out your tongue, moving your jaw, all around, wobbling your ears. That's all going to help, isn't it?
Yeah, all of that's bringing down all the fluid from your head and neck and helping clear out your nose so you can nose breathe, your sinuses so you can nose breathe. And from muscle function wise, you can do things like tongue clicks. Like if you want that muscle, click your tongue like 5 to 10 times. If you want to move your tongue and your jaw, so your tongue and jaw are supposed to move as separate structures. So you can get your tongue up to that spot we've been talking about, the bump behind your top front teeth, and keep it there. Keep the tip of your tongue there and open and close your jaw. Your jaw, not your lips. And really advanced, you can suction your whole tongue to the roof of your mouth and do that.
Anyone who's joining Instagram now, that's not going to have any idea what we're doing. Oh, that's funny.
So what we often find when we have this muscle dysfunction is the tongue and jaw are not moving independently. You're dragging the jaw along with your tongue movements. So being able to move your tongue side to side.
How's everyone going? Is everyone trying to do this? Trying to do this move?
Licking around in a circle. That should all be happening without the movement of your jaw. Hard, right? It takes a lot of concentration. You've got to sort of do the moves quite slowly to get used to it. But yeah, I would add that into, with your head and neck.
I can remember trying to get my tongue to touch my nose. That was a thing growing up. Can your tongue touch your nose?
I've seen a lot of people that can do that. It's pretty wild.
So much fun. So much fun. All right. So, sorry. I'm allergic to something that I'm pretty sure this time of year I get this cough. I think it's a bloom of something or other.
Mangoes for me. I'm allergic to mangoes.
You're mangoes?
I live in Bowen.
Oh, yeah,
mangoes are from.
Of course you live in Bowen.
It's very unfair.
Oh, I've got an avocado tree in my new house that I've just moved into, and it's got so much fruit on it now. I'm like, oh my God. I'm very excited to get get the avocado straight from the tree. We've got to go back to some of these primal moves. These primal things. We really have to get back to, like, look at all the primal postures that you can do for your body, like squatting, down and up and like, and, you know, moving. So we can do the primal functions for our face
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really good to point out those connections, like things like what we're doing with our feet. We have drivers of our posture that top down and bottom up. If you're wearing, you know, tight, strange shoes instead of being barefoot or in barefoot shoes, you can impact your pelvis and your jaw. There's really big implications for all the strange modern things we do as humans.
Yeah. I love being like, I ran around the street. I don't even think I wore shoes a lot. So I'm a barefoot girl. I like being barefoot. I don't, yeah. So I'm happy with that. You know, there's some great things about being brought up in the country, right?
Yeah.
And being like you're doing. So Cohen was 10 before we moved into the city. It was just beautiful to have that sort of lifestyle. You know, we're on 16 acres and the cows and the chooks and the running around and the, you know, no clothes and all that stuff. Yeah, it was cool. So if you got a couple of tips for people, so just like 3 sort of tips. So one of my things would just question why. If somebody says, oh, you've got a blah, 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 a bit like, okay, why? How did it get there? And if they don't know, keep asking until you can find somebody like you who can say, well, the underlying reason for that is this, and it relates to this, and it relates to that. It normally comes back to the same things all the time, but then you just add in that cool little fact about the tongue and about the breath and about the chewing and about the tonsils and about the breastfeeding. And then like, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it all really makes sense. So that would be one of my tips. Everybody watching on Zoom, Insta, and Facebook, like write in, please, what has been like a good takeaway for you, and then we can share it with everybody else. So that would be my question: is just question the underlying facts, and just know that, you know, there's lots of studies that have been done by governments who know that 67% of the population is just going to do what the authority tells you to do, what the dentist tells you to do, what the doctor tells you to do, what the ambulance man tells you to do, what the government tells you to do, whatever you're told what to do. So 67% of the population has been conditioned to just be told what to do. Question that. Be part of the 33 and question that. So that's one of my big take homes from tonight, Mel. Just ask questions and come back to that primal, like how are we meant to act? Yeah. What's another big one that you want people to go away with?
I think it's always very important. This is a conversation I'm always having when I work with people, is when you work with a health professional, it's important to understand who they are and what they do, because that will inform the outcomes they're going to provide you with. So, as we were saying before, sometimes we need the ENT surgery. Like sometimes that's unavoidable. But if you're going to go and see an ENT, you are going to see a surgeon. So what they are going to offer you is surgery. So if you go to see a typical general dentist, what they are going to offer you is fluoride and fillings. And again, we have times where you're going to need a filling in your tooth if you have decay, that's true. But don't expect alternatives from someone who isn't trained and isn't providing that. Because a lot of the time I work with people who do want a more holistic approach and are disappointed by the outcome, say, from the ENT.
Mm.
We have to be aware of who we're going to and what they're going to offer us.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, or fortunately, kind of a two-way bet there, it's up to us to handle our own health and make our own health decisions. It's not, no one else is in charge of it, even if they pretend to be.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So who can I go to? How to avoid the terrible scourge of the very old? Can't swallow properly, cough a lot because my throat is so sluggish. So that's from Denise. So have you got someone, Mel, who doesn't do children, who does adults you can refer?
Definitely. I have plenty of colleagues. You
Right.
want a speech pathologist who's trained in orofacial myology. So depending on where you are, plenty of people do it online. I don't
Yeah.
know
So
where you are,
if
but yeah,
Denise can contact you and you can give her the info.
definitely. Yeah. And this is
Beautiful.
exactly, these things sometimes just pop up almost out of nowhere in, in mid to later life where all of a sudden you can't swallow properly. And that's not something that should just be thickened liquids and deal with it and mouth moisturizing products and things like that. You can learn to swallow again and you can rehabilitate muscle function for sure.
Okay. Yes. I love that. All right. Thank you so much for tonight. I learn a lot in Bowen, but I was, as you know, we were running around doing the workshop, and that's why I said, like, I need to get you on because my whole community needs to learn a little bit more about the underlying facts, getting back to the basics, but it all just makes so much sense. This whole function of how our tongue and our jaw and then our throat and if we can catch it, if we can get our kids sorted early, once again, it's catching it early for the longer time rewards. Yeah, cool. Denise said, I'm okay. I'll look after older people. Yes. Okay. So this will be great, Denise, for you to to contact Mel and get some information because that's what we're all about. We want to be that connection of people asking questions. So yeah, everyone's saying thank you so much, all online. So we'll let you go, we'll let you get to bed because I know that your little one wakes up super early in the morning. So this is the third night of boob camp, everybody. I don't think that we will be having another boob camp before Christmas. We will be back in the new year, but of course the group is open for questions, support, community, all of the time. So if you have a question, please ask it in boob camp that you've watched tonight, and then Mel can answer it in boob camp, and the whole community can see the answer. So that's probably the best thing if you don't mind sharing your question, and then the whole community can see and learn from the answer there. Is Melanie taking on any more children for myofascial or only doing advice consults?
Yeah, only consultations. I'm not taking new therapy programs at the moment.
Okay, so yeah, no new therapy programs, advice consults. Yes. Cool. All right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for participating for the last 3 nights. Thank you, Leonie, for a different bunny ears, headset, hat every night. I love you. I love your entertainment. Thank you, Tammy, for turning up every night as well, babe. And, everybody else who has joined in and supported us on this journey. Love you. Appreciate you. And I am so glad that you are here and part of my life. All right. Thanks, Mel. Good night, everyone. Yes. Okay. Bye.